Hey guys, and welcome to another review. Today I have two 50mm for you today. I'm going to be doing a comparison between the 50mm 1.8 Series E lens and the slightly newer, by slightly I mean much newer, 50mm 1.8 G. Now both of these lenses have a maximum aperture of 1.8. So they both will do very well in low light situations, although the minimum aperture of this 50mm Series E lens is a bit smaller, so it will go to f22, while the 50mm 1.8 G can only go down to f16. So to start with the 50mm 1.8 G, it's bigger than the Series E lens. It's also more expensive. This lens was made in, I want to say, like 2012. It was started in production. It's about $130. At least that's how much I got it on eBay used. It's a good lens. It's pretty sharp. It's got nice bokeh. Its build quality is good. It's centered towards the back end here, so it puts less weight on your camera. It's got manual focus and autofocus, with manual override on the autofocus. So that means I can turn the focus ring even if it's set to autofocus, which helps because then you can tweak your focus if you want something more in focus or more out of focus. You can just turn the ring even if it's in autofocus. The switch clicks very nicely. It's not too much resistance, but it stays there. The focus ring itself is smooth. The focusing is accurate. It focuses a little bit. It can focus a little past infinity, which isn't helpful, but you have infinity all the way to 0.45 of a meter. Now it isn't super close, but it's close enough because then with the sharpness of this lens, you can crop in and make it look like you shot it from closer up if you really wanted to. It's actually a really nice lens. It's, as I said, its aperture goes pretty wide. It has 1.8, so that'll help you get good low light shots. When you do focus, it kind of extends, but it won't extend past the front part here. So even if you do bump your camera into something, you most likely will not damage the glass. So UV filters and other filters like that meant to protect the glass here are pretty much pointless. It even comes with a lens hood, which also is kind of pointless because this part here shades the glass already. Like it basically is its own built-in lens hood, which is nice because then you don't have to put a lens hood on it, even if although it is sometimes helpful if there's a lot of flaring and whatnot. Although this lens doesn't have a big problem with flaring, so that's a good thing about this lens as well. I really don't have anything bad about this lens. It's got sharp images, and very nice, clean, smooth bokeh. And it's also relatively cheap for $130 on eBay if it's used. I think it's a pretty good deal. So let's move on to the 50mm Series E lens. Now with the Series E, this was These are no longer being produced. They're from the 1980s. It's a vintage, fully manual lens. It has no autofocus, although it does fit on digital SLR cameras because Nikon kept the same mount throughout all these years, so it fits perfectly, and it's actually pretty sharp. It rivals the sharpness of the 50mm 1.8G, even though it's made from the 1980s. You get a nice aperture ring here, which clicks to every aperture. As I said, it goes to f22 all the way to 1.8. So I'll show you what that looks like. So you can manually control the aperture right on the lens instead of going into your camera to change it. Also, the focus ring is very smooth, and it extends a bit, but that's not a problem because look how tiny this thing is. It's almost a pancake lens. This lens I got for $25 on eBay. $25. I think that's quite amazing for the amount of the amazing image quality that it puts out. I just cannot believe it. It's got a nice aperture range. It goes all the way to f1.8, although it doesn't focus quite as close as the 1.8G. It can focus, decently close, and you can crop in and make it look like you shot it from farther away, just like the other lens. The only main difference between the image quality of both of these lenses is the 50mm 1.8G has a little bit better contrast and slightly smoother bokeh because it has more aperture blades than this does. So you get more like boxy bokeh balls instead of smoother round ones, although I still think it looks pretty smooth anyway. A lot of these lenses on eBay you have to be careful about because these lenses are so old, they often have issues with dust or fungus or lens bubbles, but this one didn't, so there's no problems with image quality or anything. Now I'm going to show you some sample pictures I've taken with these lenses. Both of them were at f2.8 for most of the time. I changed the shutter speed depending on how much sunlight there was. I kept the ISO at 100. I used a tripod, and all the photos were mostly taken at 0.6 of a meter, which is the closest focusing distance of the 50mm 1.8 Series E lens. Although I did take some pictures to show you how close the 50mm 1.8G could get, because it can focus just a bit closer. So let's check these out. Although the 50mm 1.8G has better image quality, can focus closer, better bokeh, and it's slightly better contrast, the 50mm Series E can go down to the same aperture. It is just as sharp, although its contrast isn't quite as good. And it's still got good bokeh, and it's extremely cheap. That's the biggest thing about this lens. It's still got good build quality. It's light. I mean, there's nothing really that bad about this lens. Although, if you want more of a professional outlook, or just a better lens in general, and you want this lens. You want the 50mm 1.8G. The reason behind this is it's got autofocus, so you don't have to take the time to use manual focus. You can just pull out your camera, autofocus, snap the picture, done. With this you have to take more time, you have to think about the shot more, in my opinion at least. And I think I have more fun with this lens than I do with the 1.8G. But overall, both of them are very good lenses, and I would recommend them both. Thanks for watching, and subscribe.